are
Lisa
you
will
set?
not be joining us.
Okay.
Gary, go ahead, take over, bud.
Okay, well, thank you guys for just having the interest of getting together, because I think it is a great idea. Another opportunity for us to just talk about what's going on. So I did put together a, hopefully you got it, a very short agenda, just to kind of let you know that the first item on the agenda is the claims audit report, a little report from Lisa, which my understanding in the past, you only received once a year, but I always thought a good idea to each time we have an audit committee meeting, do a claims report and keep it a little more current. Okay. And I've also, as you see, have invited from Mengelmitzer Bar, our auditor, chief auditor, Mike DeBatz. So thank you, Mike, for coming and just talking about that management letter. So we will start off with that claims audit report. So Lisa, if you would like to review that.
I asked Tina to send out a copy of the report yesterday, so I hope you've had a chance to look at it. I don't think any big surprises. It's pretty similar to how the end of the year one is usually how we see the end of the year report. Most of the deficiencies are just that there's been no PO submitted, or the PO was submitted after the invoice. Otherwise, everything else is pretty minor, I think. Just some addition errors, maybe a missing signature from an invoice. The backup documentation not submitted, but when requested, they were able to provide it. So nothing really glaring. Does anybody have any questions about the report? Paul?
Yeah, I was on the audit committee last year too, or at least one of the recent years. And I remember that Bob had created a program which was essentially aimed at reducing the number of POs that were missing. But I don't have that report, so I don't know what the comparison is. But, you know, it seems like that's the, as you've already pointed out, Lisa, that's the one that comes up time and time again. So is there some training program we can initiate where we can chip away at that one and get it down?
Well, I can review that with Ro. It's my sense that we have made great strides in reducing the number of claim forms and utilizing POs. I know Ro's very, she tries very hard to make that happen, okay? And I think that stems from the top. Also, Mike is saying, do we have a PO for that? And I'm asking the same thing. And so it is our policy that we do cut a PO for all purchases. Having said that, there are certain exceptions for reimbursements and things where you know, the formal encumbering of a line item budget I don't want to say it doesn't make sense, but lends its way to a claim form process. So all of these, I just would want to reiterate that when a PO isn't done and there's a claim form done, it still has the prior approval of the purchasing agent. So I know that purchase orders are something that our auditors, and Mike, feel free to jump in, stress that we should always follow that formalized purchase order process. But I think we'll probably have some exceptions from time to time in certain areas. Mike, would you like to comment on the use of POs?
Yeah, I was just gonna just say along those lines, that's certainly not a unique to North Rose-Wolcott to have that as a finding, periodically. Partially just due to the nature in a school district, you have so many different folks that are your end purchasers. So it makes it a little bit tougher to get your procedures to be followed all the time, because you do have teachers that just want to get something for the classroom, or situations like that sometimes people just don't think about the process. Now, I didn't see the list of findings, so I can't speak to any specifics, but I just wanted to jump in and say that's certainly not a unique finding to have to the district. We see it everywhere we go. But I think Gary's comment about the tone at the top is the best tool you can have to continue to try to drive it home when you do have some findings. And potentially one other thing that we've seen is some districts will come up with a form to like a form letter to send to that initial purchaser, to send them when there is a situation like this, to try to prevent it from happening in the future. But do the best you can.
Yeah. So Gary, based on your experience over a couple of different school districts, are we about average? Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? And I understand already that you're going to pay some attention, add some additional attention to it, but is it?
I think we're doing as good or better
Okay.
than what I've seen in other districts. Of course, Mike's more recent on the number of districts that he sees, but I would just say that we make a strong effort to get purchase orders cut prior to ordering goods.
Okay. That's
So,
good.
and we'll continue that.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you, Lisa, for that. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. You're welcome to stay, but I won't hold you to it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. The next on the agenda is, although I want to say, because I wasn't here for the last audit committee meeting, that was early October, when I believe Mike here did review the financial audit report, and I believe that this management letter was also presented at that meeting. So I didn't want, I wasn't quite sure if the management letter, if it was something that you folks had not seen before or really addressed during that last audit committee meeting. But in any case, it's nice to come back to it at this point, as I've created a draft corrective action plan, just to review those items and maybe put those items, Mike DeBatz can help put those items into perspective for us. So would you like to comment on these items, Mike?
Yeah, so, when I came out to go over the financial statements, we did talk about the management letter a little bit. One of the main points that I would just like to make with the management letter is that, we didn't identify anything that we considered to be a control deficiency, or, something that we necessarily felt that the district needed to have corrective action plan for in order to, prevent a misstatement or anything like that. However, and we even put in the letter that we don't consider these items to be deficiencies, but they're things we wanted to point out to you. And we've had some conversations with the state education department, and they feel that since we put things in our written report, that there should be a corrective action plan for these items. So we're going to deal with that moving forward. But, as Gary said, he's working on the corrective action plan. So just to remind you of the items that we did put in there, we talked about a cyber risk management, which, as you all know, the cyber risk is one of the biggest risks there is out there for a district. these days. In general, we see more and more phishing attacks and different things going on in school districts. So really the idea that we're looking for is to have the district come in, have a third party come in to do a risk assessment, essentially like the internal auditor used to do from a financial standpoint, but a specific somebody that's specialized in IT. And there is starting to be a little more service providers in that area out there. BOCES does have a service to do this, but the last I knew, that's got about an 18 to 24 month lag because there's so much demand for it right now. So that was the main idea with the cyber risk management. And then the next item was regarding the federal programs. And again, this stems back to New York State getting in trouble with the feds for not properly monitoring local districts when it came to the special education grants. So as part of their corrective action, they're suggesting that all school districts should have a specific federal procurement manual. And the ASBO, New York State Association of School Business Officials, has provided a sample on their website. It's 96 pages long. So it is quite a task to still take on, but it provides a good template, you know, for somebody in the district to take that template and fill in the specifics for North Rose-Wolcott, you know, specific policies that address things, and identifying what the policies are. And, you know, if there's something that's in that template that the district doesn't have in place, then that's something that you would want to address as well. And then the third item that we had in the management letter related to leases and Gas B87. There's a new accounting standard that'll be implemented in June of 2022, related to the way that leases are handled in the financial statements. It's not going to affect the operating statements or the way the district budgets or anything like that. But if the district does have any leases that would be applicable to that, that'll change your government-wide financial statement. You know, so one of the big things that we're working through right now is, you know, most districts get your computer and technology assets through BOCES, but it's kind of an interesting situation because generally speaking, there aren't lease terms. You know, the district will take computers and use them for their useful life, and then at the end of that useful life, they'll send them back to BOCES to be disposed of. You know, so we're trying to determine if it's a lease, if it, you know, if it's not a lease. So that's one of the big things that we're working through in general. But beyond that, we'll be reaching out to the district and requesting that you put together a list of any other items you lease. If you lease any lawn tractors or, you know, floor scrubbers or copiers, things like that, and just get that big list put together to begin with. And then we'll work with the district to evaluate, you know, what's material and what's going to have to be reflected in the financial statements that hasn't been previously. So that was, you know, the three items that we identified. Bring to your attention. So any questions on those as you get ready for a corrective action plan and everything?
I guess I don't hope to understand GASB at all. I've heard the term, but why are they after leases? I mean, isn't that, I mean, can you shed some light on why all of a sudden that's coming out?
So the real backstory on that is, so GASB is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And then outside of the government, there's FASB, which is Financial Accounting Standards Board. And the FASB has a new lease standard that's coming out that'll be implemented next year as well. And really, it's just the GASB's attempt to keep the governmental financial statements consistent with non-governmental entities. And I mean, especially like a school district, if you don't lease your whole bus fleet and some of those things, it's not really as significant of an accounting standard as it would be to say, you know, like the Carolus Truck Rentals, who is just in the business of leasing trucks out all the time.
Yeah.
So the short answer is they're just trying to keep your financial statements consistent with non-governmental entities. You know, so I think that similar to the fiduciary fund accounting standard that was implemented in 2021, I think it's kind of just, again, the school district isn't kind of an innocent bystander getting caught up in the accounting standards to a certain extent. I don't think it really improves the usability of the financial statements a whole lot to your residents, but we've got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's, you know, going back to my old auditing days, Mike was probably pretty young. A long time ago, but there's been this effort to make governmental reporting more similar to the non-governmental regular financials. So there, and as a result, I think our financial statements are more difficult to read. These is, to me anyhow, although within the financial report, there's still the basic schedules that you'll find for each of our funds, balance sheet, revenues, and expenditures. There's a lot of other confusing schedules and information in the report simply because it's of these requirements in GASB trying to keep pace with FASB.
Yeah, and I've only been doing this for 16 years, and the financial statements are 50% longer than they were when I started.
Wow.
So
They're always looking for more information and trying to conform with each other, I guess.
Well,
So,
and I think for our group purposes, Mike, what you pointed out is really helpful. To my knowledge, the only lease agreement that we have would be with Eastern for our copiers. The rest of the stuff is equipment we purchase. You know, so I think that it really, it's something that we'll obviously adhere to, but I don't think it's going to have a great impact on us overall, especially when it comes down to our day-to-day operations.
right.
it is interesting that what you point out with the computers that we purchased through BOCES, and you're struggling with the question whether or not they could be considered a lease, even though we don't think of them at all as leases.
Yeah, that's, you know, and because we've posed the question directly to BOCES. For all intents and purposes, it is a purchase, but the district never actually takes ownership.
Correct.
BOCES continues to own them and insure them. So that's where it's a really interesting
And all those
situation.
items are tagged as BOCES equipment.
Right. And it's just to generate state aid, the way that it's done. So
Very interesting.
Can I ask a question about cyber risk management? To my way of thinking, our district has been above average. I can't compare it, but I believe that our IT people are really savvy in the idea of risk management. And I think what I read in the paragraph is that instead of just meeting and talking about things like that, which they routinely do, they should take notes and make up a manual and say, we did this and we're going to do this and we're watching this and we're watching that. And I think that's what satisfies that paragraph, doesn't it?
yeah, okay. I think that would suffice. It's really just, you know, having that process and then formally documenting where there is a potential risk area and how the district has either is addressing it or monitoring it to make sure that you're keeping the risks at an acceptable level.
So John, last year we did have BOCES come in and work with our team, you know, Jeff Ginsburg, who is kind of like the resident expert. in cybersecurity and cyber attacks. He did work with our administrative team. And then, remember in the fall, we talked about the laptops that we're purchasing. There will be a component where, as part of our regular training, every staff member who receives a new computer will have to sign up for our Safer Schools approach online and take a course specific to cybersecurity. And then this afternoon, as part of our safety committee meeting, there's a component that addresses cybersecurity from that aspect as well. So what Mike's saying is formalize it. What you're saying is memorialize it and then act on it on a regular basis, which we absolutely will do based on what's happened to some of the local entities recently, where, up north, the hospital was held hostage for Bitcoin, and then Victor was shut down and paralyzed by malware. We have a tape backup as well, which is extremely helpful to know that if we were under attack, Lisa's got everything in an off-site location on tape backup.
Okay, good. It's becoming a threat to not just school districts, but to every industry there is.
Correct. Sad.
Yeah. I'm not too keen about the federal one where you suggested a 96-page policy type thing.
Yeah, I would like to say that when I shared my corrective action plan, the finding with Bridget Barr, she within hours came up with that template and has begun to work on it. So she's all over it.
I figured as well.
Yep, that she has been terrific. So any other questions on those items? I will just say then that the next item is a review of the corrective action plan. That simply put is just a paraphrasing the management letter comments, and then indicating along with a timeline when these items will be addressed. And for each of these items, I just said that they will be addressed, and we'll have documentation for these items that we need by the end of the fiscal year. Okay, and so I would intend to have the correction action plan approved at the regular board meeting in January, if this committee's fine with it.
I thought it was well done.
I would offer that on the corrective action plan for the cyber attack is that we use something like expand or continue, because even Mike had pointed out, Mike DeBetts had pointed out that we do already document our program, but we need to expand the documentation. So that would only be a wordsmithing, I guess, and let's acknowledge that Lisa already has a plan that she's working on, that she has, and that we just need to expand on it.
Definitely do that, Paul. Thank you. That's a good idea.
And I know Mike Pullen is a big fan of administrative procedures, get them written down, abide by them. So I think we're all on the same page.
I agree. Okay, next on the agenda then, since we have Mike DeBatts here as our auditor, and we have audits in progress, I thought he could give us an update on what's going on.
Yeah, so the last piece of, finishing up the 2021 fiscal year for the district is for us to complete the single audit and the audit of the student activities. We were out a couple of weeks ago doing the field work between BOCES and the district for the different documentation. So that field work has been done. So we're just, doing our stuff on the back end. I anticipate getting those draft reports out to the district this week, so that you'll have time to take a look at them and get those done. The extra class report should be submitted to New York State by January 15th. And then the single audit is due at the end of March, 9 months after the fiscal year end. But we like to try to just get everything wrapped up by the end of the calendar year. So that's just a little update. We don't have any findings or question costs in the single audit, so that'll be a clean one. The extra class, you know, you've got students handling all the financial activity, so there's always a couple of comments in there. So we just, you know, do the best you can and continue to strive for improvement with those. But just to give you an update, I anticipate getting those out this week and you know, finally be finishing up the 2021 year. Any questions about either of those? I think you're most of you folk, or you know, you guys on the audit committee here have been on the audit committee before, so you've seen them and you know kind of what's going on with those. So.
And those draft reports will come to me. I'll review those. Take exception to any exceptions if I have to, and work with our CPAs there with Mike to finalize those reports. So I would expect to bring those reports in a final form for approval in January also. John, you're muted. I didn't.
So we'll have another meeting in January by Zoom.
If you want an audit committee meeting in January, yes, we can do that. Otherwise, they can be sent out to the entire board ahead of time. But we can certainly do another audit committee meeting. Have no problem with that.
Well, I know what you mean, that the student one, clubs and et cetera, is usually the same things, because you get new treasurers and new faculty members, and in the heat of school days, things get mislaid. So
yeah, especially the last year and a half with COVID, you know,
true.
it's been tough too. We've certainly seen less activity, but also, you know, it's been a little bit tougher to get all the required signatures and everything, because people aren't always together every day. Hopefully that'll change sometime.
Gary, just thinking that through a little bit, I would suggest we meet as an audit committee in January and then make the recommendation to the full board in February, just because that'll give us a chance as a smaller group to scrutinize everything that Mike and his team uncover. And then it'll also allow for a little bit of breakage between, you know, the new year and that first business meeting, January 13th.
Yeah, my thought there is, and we can ask Mike DeBetts, the extra classroom should be filed as an approved report in January.
Yes. Yeah. If you could, I would recommend taking it to the board at January 13th meeting, to have the board acceptance into the state portal by the 15th as well.
Okay.
So that first week of January, we should have a final ready, do you think, Mike?
Yeah.
So maybe I'd be glad to have another audit committee meeting during that week.
That makes sense then. I didn't know about the January 15th date, so that makes perfect sense. Let's do that. Then we can hit the mark as a small group and then get it to the entire board to adopt there. I didn't know about the January 15th, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. So, okay, we got a plan. I appreciate, Mike, you coming and giving your input.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a
Okay.
good holiday.
Thank you. Is there any other questions that the committee has?
Just Gary, just set up some dates and times, and we'll all correspond to you and see what works.
We'll
Okay.
go through Tina just to be consistent. Okay, John?
What's that?
we'll go through Tina. She'll send them out to
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, everybody have a great day.
You too.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.